start, the purpose of this speech is not in any way to glorify the actions of this man. It is simply to inform you about his life, his crimes, and his eventual arrest. Now, I don't know, what's the first serial killer you think of? Who pops into your mind when you are asked to think of a serial killer?
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Exactly. Now, have any of you guys seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Psycho with Norman Bates, or Silence of the Lambs?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Well, Ed Gein, also known as the Plainfield Butcher, actually was the inspiration for all three of these movie characters. So, basically, I'm just going to give you a preview of his family life growing up, some of the crimes he committed, the things that were found at his house when he was eventually arrested, and what happened to him after he was arrested. So growing up, Ed was awkward. He was bullied at school a lot. He was made fun of because he would often talk to himself and make inappropriate comments. So he got noticed by his teachers. He wasn't very well liked. He was very socially awkward. At home, he was obsessed, you could say, with his mother. She kept him on a very short leash. He wasn't allowed to date when he was older. He was basically taught from a young age that sex was the root of all evil. It was unacceptable. Just stay away from it. Whenever he brought home a woman when he was older, in his teenage years, his mom would basically convince him that she was evil and that he was never allowed to date. So he was very isolated and spent most of his time on his family farm doing chores. After his father and brother passed away, the obsession with his mother grew even more. He didn't have any friends. All he did was stay at home with his mom, which obviously doesn't make for a very socially rounded person. His brother actually died in a fire that was on the property of Ed Gein's farmhouse in Plainfield, Wisconsin. And when the police came to investigate the brother's murder, they noticed that there was not any burns on the brother. And even though it was never proved, it's suspected that Ed Gein actually murdered his brother, and that was his first murder. So after that, the obsession with his, what he called fantasies, grew even more. He had a deep fascination with the female anatomy, and after his mother died, he got even worse. He watched pornographic films and he studied medical journals. He would hoard them at his house and he would read about them, and particularly he was fascinated with the Nazi torture methods used in concentration camps. So as he got older, he decided that he was going to start digging up corpses from graveyards to perform experiments with. And the first body he actually dug up was that of his deceased mother. And he would rob these graves, take the bodies, take them back to his house, and experiment on them. He would strip them of their skin, and he actually was obsessed with becoming a woman after a certain amount of time. And so he actually made, on here, it's a full female bodysuit made out of human skin that he would put on and walk around his house as if he were a woman. Well, when he decided that he needed fresher specimens, he resorted to murder. His first murder was actually a tavern owner named Mary Hogan, and she was murdered on December 8th of 1954 using a .22 caliber rifle, which was Gein's murder weapon of choice. Then he was never caught. But his second murder was a woman by the name of Bernice Worden, whose body is actually the top left picture. And she was also murdered with a .22 caliber rifle, and Ed was the suspect in this murder. The police got onto him because he was the last person who had bought antifreeze at Bernice Worden's store, and they found the receipt from the night before and found out Gein was the last person to see Worden alive. So they went to his house to investigate, and well, what they found changed the history of murders forever. Nothing like this had ever been recorded in history. So to read off what they found at his house, they found Bernice Worden's body hanging in the shed, and she had been gutted and dressed out much like you would a deer and had been decapitated. She was hanging upside down with a crossbar in between her legs, and her wrists were tied up by ropes. And that was out in his shed. That was the first thing police discovered. On further investigation of the farmhouse, they found 4 human noses, whole human bones, 9 masks made of human skin that had been peeled, much like Leatherface did to his victims in the movie. They found bowls made from human skulls, which is also right there in that picture. They found 10 female heads that had been sawed off on the top. They found human skin that had been upholstered to a chair. They found Mary Hogan, his first victim's head, in a paper bag. They found Bernice Worden's head, the body from the shed, in a burlap sack. They found women's sexual parts in a box in his bathroom. They found skulls on his bedposts, organs in his refrigerator. He practiced cannibalism as well. They found a pair of lips that had been made into a drawstring pull on his window. They found a belt, which is on the skin suit, made from human female nipples that had been cut off and dried. And they found a lampshade, also made from human skin. So, needless to say, Gein was arrested for the murder of Bernice Worden. Well, once he went to trial, he was found mentally unstable and unfit for trial. So he was sent to a mental hospital. And after that time, after a while, the mental hospital said, "We think he is fit to stand trial." So he went before the court and was found guilty on 1 count of first-degree murder for the murder of Bernice Worden. And Mary Hogan, they didn't charge him with it. It's not known why. So he was sentenced to life in a mental hospital. And he remained there until he died on July 26, 1984. So in conclusion, while he was in the mental hospital, his house was burned down due to arson. And even though he's not a widely known serial killer, and he's not considered a serial killer because he was only acquitted on 1 count of murder, he is still one of the most influential people in horror movie history because he influenced 3 movie characters.